get going. It's gone 8 o'clock now, so we'll get going. I'm Rebecca Bradley. This is the Crime Book Club. Today we are discussing Their Little Secret by Mark Billingham, and I've got the title right because when I emailed Mark, I called it Their Little Lies. It was early in the morning, so he did correct me, and I'm like, oh, not a good start. I'm surprised he turned up. But Mark is with us. For anybody watching this after the event, there will be spoilers in the discussion, so don't watch if you haven't yet read the book and are intending to. So we're going to talk to Mark first for the first 10-15 minutes, ask him some questions, get his thoughts on things, and then we'll let Mark go and discuss the book as we usually do. So everybody's happy with that?
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay, Mark, over to you. Where did you get the idea?
Over to me, what? Well, it was...
Where did you get the idea for a female-led killer couple?
Okay, well, it's rarely one idea, actually, when you start. It's a couple of things that rattle around in your head for a while and then sort of collide. And two things happened, which is that I'd been listening to this story on the radio one morning while I was having a breakfast about this woman who'd been living this extraordinary lie. And, you know, you all know what that lie is because you've read the book. And it's true. I mean, this is a true thing. I heard it on the radio. And all I could think of was, firstly, how did she get away with it for so long? And why? Why was she doing it? What a very, very strange thing to do the school run every morning and every afternoon and do everything you'd do if you were a mother, except she's not. And that rattled around in my head because I just found that extraordinary. Any little story that makes me ask questions is sort of filed away. And I've always been fascinated by con men. I've always had this, firstly, why is it always con men? Why they never con women? And my theory is just that women are far too sneaky and they never get caught. But it's, con men, the idea that these men that travel around adopting different identities and fleecing women, and that's always fascinated me. And I just thought, what would happen if I put these two liars together who are lying for very different reasons about very different things? And a few years ago, I'd made a documentary about Myra Hindley and Ian Brady, and that had always fascinated me. Not just that particular case, but the whole notion of the folie à deux, this two people coming together and creating like a third entity, something, which is usually sort of monstrous. We only know the monstrous ones, Hindley and Brady and Fred and Rose West, whatever it might be. And that had stayed with me because while I was making that documentary, and this is going back a few years while Ian Brady was still alive, Ian Brady wrote to me, which was quite an extraordinary letter to get. And it's just, I've always been fascinated by it. So I knew what was going to happen when I put Sarah and Conrad together. And I also knew, because of what had happened in the previous book in the series, that Thorne and Tanner would be wrestling with a little secret of their own. And something that, they were having to live with. And off I went, really. There was nothing too planned because I don't really plan books. I just start writing and see where they go. But that's rough. That's where the idea came from.
Well, that was the last question, actually. What is your writing process like? Plotter or pantser, researcher, or just get it down? What?
You just start. No, you just start. I mean, I've got just over there is a whiteboard that I put on my office wall, and I thought that's going to be full of plot ideas and chapter breakdowns and, color-coded Post-it notes, and all it says is get dressed, buy cheese, write novel. That's all it says. I just have an opening. I kind of have an opening scene or two at the end of which I want questions, at the end of which I'm going, who are these people? Why are they doing these things? And I don't necessarily know the answer, and Thorne doesn't know the answer, and we'll all discover the answers at the same time along with the readers. So no, I don't. I know plenty of mystery writers who spend, just as an example, Jeff Deaver. I don't know if anybody's ever read any Jeffrey Deaver, wonderful American mystery writer. Jeff will spend 9 months planning a book. I mean, not just chapter by chapter, but paragraph by paragraph, planning it, plotting it. Then I'll spend a couple of months writing it. That's just I couldn't do that. That would be like homework. It means quite often that you take a lot of wrong turnings and you have to step away from it for a week or two and work stuff out because you painted yourself into a corner. Somebody once described it as like driving through fog at night. And that's the best analogy I can think of. I know where I'm going. I kind of have an end in sight, but I've no flipping idea how I'm going to get there. So I'm driving through fog at night, and I can only see as far as the end of my headlights. You know, maybe what's happening in the next chapter. Beyond that, I haven't got a clue.
And you've written all the novels that way?
Yeah, and there's a sort of superstitious thing, which I think a lot of writers have, a sort of superstition / OCD thing where you go, well, that worked once, I'm not going to change the way you know, I don't know too many writers who've changed the way they write in 20 or 30 years. You just go, yeah, that works for me. I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah. You've just said it's been how long you've been writing. Their Little Secret is book 16 in the series. Are you still enjoying spending time with Tom Thorne?
Yes, I am, but because I take some time away from him. I mean, I think you have to do that. I couldn't have written 20 Thorne novels one after the other. I think I wrote 6 on the bounce when I started before I did my first standalone. And then I've sort of gone, you know, a couple of Thorne standalone, 2 or 3 Thorne standalone. The book that's out currently is a Thorne book, but it's a prequel to the first Thorne novel. And the book that I've just finished writing, which will be out next year, is another standalone. And I think that's the way to do it. I've learned from the best. I've learned from people like Michael Connolly, you know, people who have maintained an incredibly high level, I think, over a massively long-running series, the Harry Bosch books. And the way he's done that, he's stepped away and done different things. And those other things bleed into the series. You know, Nicola Tanner, who is a very prominent character in Their Little Secret, first appeared in a standalone book called Die of Shame. And then she sort of bled into the series because I just thought, oh, I'd quite like to see what happens when I put her and Thorne together. So that kind of stuff happens, and it freshens the brew a bit, you know. And because I don't know any very much about Thorne, I don't know any more about him than the readers do. Generally, I have no file on him, so you know. Hopefully he's still unpredictable. Because if I know exactly what he's going to do, then the reader's going to know, and they'll run out of steam. So yeah, no, I'm still enjoying spending time with a miserable old bugger.
What do you like about him?
He likes great music. He's a country music fan. He's passionate about what, when I started the books, were an ailing football team. Spurs were doing really badly when I started the series. That's why I made him a Spurs fan. I'm not a Spurs fan, I'm a Wolves fan. And they were doing really badly. So I thought, he's going to support the London equivalent of Wolves. If I was going to start the series again, he'd probably be like a QPR fan or a Crystal Palace fan or something. He's not always the best copper in the world. He does a lot of really stupid things and bad things. He's done some terrible things over the course of the series. But, you know, his heart's in the right place. Which of us always does the right thing? You know, he's not a hero. He's just, you know, he's an idiot sometimes. But I wouldn't mind having a pint with him.
I know you're his creator, but is there anything about him that you don't like?
Oh, blimey. He doesn't know when he's not wanted. And sometimes, in terms of his domestic life, he doesn't know when he is, which has caused him quite a lot of grief over the course of the series. He's not the same person. He's nowhere near the same person he was when I started the series. How can he be the same person at the end of a book? You know, he's not the same person at the end of Their Little Secret as he is at the start of the book. We can't put these characters, those of us that write books like this, can't put these characters through year in, year out, grief and death and pain and loss and violence, and then expect them to be exactly the same. They can't just bounce back up again. You know, it's not Tom and Jerry. So yeah, he's a much different character. He's clearly a lot older than he was when I started, aren't we all? And yeah, he's not the same. He's a little more scarred, I guess, inside and out. But yeah, I still get on with him.
How are you aging him in the books? Is he aging every year, or are you aging him gradually?
I started aging him every year. I mean, I think maybe the first dozen books he ages in real time. And then I started to go, hang on a minute. You know, if I was to go back, I'd make him younger when he started. Every single writer of a series I know thinks that. God, why didn't I make him 25 when we started? You know? But the point is, even though there's a year between books, there's not necessarily a year between cases.
Yeah.
So he is aging, of course he is, but not quite as
Not
same
as
speed
fast.
I am.
Yeah. You said that you're a pantser, so for those that aren't writers, you don't plot out your novels, you don't know what's coming in the book that you're writing necessarily. So my next question is, how far in the future do you know the series? Do you actually know any further?
No, not a clue. Absolutely not. As I say, I've finished next year's book. That's a standalone. I've got another Thorn book to write. Not got an idea in my head. Absolutely not an idea in my head. Something will turn up. I'll hear something on the radio, or I'll see something on page 12 of a newspaper, or somebody will tell me something. But no, I don't have it planned out at all. I sometimes talk to writers who go, "Yeah, I've got the next 3 books worked out," and I just think, I want to kill you. No, I've never thought that far ahead.
Not even for Thorn's character rather than stories? You don't know where his character's going?
No, because the stories will affect his character, and the stories will come from character. No, I've no idea. I mean, all I know, right, is that I have no plans in the next book or 2 to kill him off.
That's good.
That's only in the next book or 2. You know, if the time is right to do it, I will do it. I don't think I'm sentimental about it. Having said that, friends of mine, writers who have done those things, are still paying for them. You know, I know I've been in so there's a writer called Karen Slaughter. I don't know if many of you read Karen Slaughter.
Yeah.
She killed off a major character about 10 years ago. And I remember reading that book. I was on a beach.
That was a shocker.
And I turned the page and went, "What the have you done?" And I kind of emailed her going, "Oh my God, what have you done?" I was in a lift with her at a mystery convention in America a couple of years ago, and some women got in and they saw her name tag and they went, "What did you do?" They screamed at her. I mean, this is years later. So you've got to be a bit careful about it. You've got to be very confident. But I have killed characters off. Poor old Elvis the cat bit the dust. I still get grief for that.
You can't kill animals.
No. Well, no, I mean, he just died. I mean, cats don't live that long, you know. There you go.
Okay. I've got one more question. It's from a book club member. Somebody who read that whole email, Marina. This is from Wendy. How do you straddle the line between telling new readers the backstory and not boring old readers with backstory?
That's the constant battle. That's the constant tightrope you walk with a series, because every book has to stand on its own 2 feet. Every book has to work as a standalone. But you also have to kind of acknowledge or honor what's happened in the previous 15 or 16 books and those readers who have read the previous 15 or 16 books. But there comes a point, you know, where every book, let's say Phil Hendricks enters the narrative. I have to describe him in some way to people who don't know who Phil Hendricks is, while not just saying the same old shit I always say, so that readers go, "Oh yeah, we know, tattoos and piercings and blah, blah, blah." That you have to find an elegant way of doing it. The great thing about the book I've just written, which is a prequel, is I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff because it's a prequel. There is no past. What I was able to do was feed in a few little things that readers of the series would go, "Oh, I know what that's going to turn into," you know, 5 books down the line. This is the book where he meets Hendricks for the first time, you know, in the mid-90s. So stuff like that was a lot of fun. But what you say is a constant battle. And sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes I'll get my manuscript back from my editor who will go, "Great, loved it, but you do realize you've given away the killer in book 12. You know, you'll mention something that is a spoiler for a previous book, or you have to be aware of that stuff. But at the same time, it has to work for brand new readers. So.
Yeah. And that's all I've got. Thank you very much for coming along.
Is that it? Am I done?
Yeah, you're done.
Oh God, what are you going to say? What are you evil? Look at you. You can't wait. You just can't wait. Oh no, somebody's rubbing their hands together with glee. All right, well, okay, just before I go, I'm sorry about the sex scenes. I apologize about the sex scenes because I really don't normally do them. Anybody that's read any of my, I'm a firm believer in closing the bedroom door, but they were important in this book. I really believe that the only reason for putting any kind of sex scene is because we all know what it is and what the mechanics of putting the two-piece jigsaws together are. But it said something about their characters, so it needed to be there.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. I apologise.
We'll let you off.
Right.
Thanks for turning up anyway today, Mark.
So tell
Really
me where I can
appreciate
watch this whole butchery tomorrow.
It will be on my blog, which is RebeccaBradleyCrime.com.
Okay.
But we are going to block you just in case.
All right.
The ventriloquist doll, what's his name? This is it.
Well, nice to see you all anyway. And thank you for reading it, whatever you thought. Thank you for reading it.
Thank you. Thanks,
All right.
Mark.
Thank you.
Bye. Well, that was good, wasn't it?
That's nice to do,
Really
isn't it?
nice. Yeah.
That answered a lot of questions that I had. Well done, Rebecca.
Really?
Yeah.
I have to be honest and say my question was prompted by the fact that I thought in this book, I noticed all of the references to the previous situation and thought, if I hadn't read the previous books, I would probably be really irritated by all these kind of hints about what went on. I don't know how anybody else felt about it.
So
I felt exactly that. I'd not read any of the series,
Yeah.
and I thought there was far too much of that without him telling me what had happened. So
The incident with Tanner and her
yeah,
breaking some kind of law that they've covered up.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly obvious that they've done something that they shouldn't, and you know, they've sort of been morally obliged, if you like, to protect each other from the consequences of this terrible thing. But because it's never explained, I was thinking it just feels like you're tantalizing me all the time, and yeah, I just wondered if that would be irritating if you hadn't read it.
Because it was such a big deal for them, whatever happened. They couldn't just come into the next book and ignore it as characters.
No.
That they had to, this was actually one of the questions, so we may as well start there, but I don't think they could come in and deal with it and ignore each other and ignore the situation. I think they had to deal with it, because as people, they would deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's that emotional fallout from it has such a, you know, it reverberates all through this book as to the situation they're in and the way they think about things and their relationships to each other. And it's sort of, I don't know what you do, which is why I was really keen to find out what he'd say.
Yeah, it's. Did anybody read the previous book? Do we know what happened?
yeah. Read it. No.
See, I mean, I haven't read any books, and I was sort of, I mentioned on the last time we talked that I liked the series, and that it didn't bother me because there were what, 2 police officers and a pathologist, and you know, things are unspoken, especially in those sorts of worlds, and bits and pieces like that. So,
Whoops.
can you still hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I read into it that it was the unwritten or the action that had happened previously, and one can sort of work out what it was anyway through what I read. But it does make me now want to go back and read some of his previous books. I mean, I loved it, so you know, it has sort of, you know, lit the old taste buds, and I want to read some more.
I was definitely interested in the book before this one, through reading this book.
Yeah, and this is the thing, because I'd read previous ones in the series, I think the earlier ones, but I hadn't read the one where the incident takes place that they're referring to. So I was thinking, oh, darn, now I feel I've missed out. So Karen, you said you have read it. So can you tell us a bit, or maybe not, maybe if we want to read it.
It'd probably spoil it for you, wouldn't it? But it's something they do between them to cover something up. If that makes sense.
What title of the previous book?
Sorry?
What was the title of the previous book?
I can tell you because I've got the other ones here.
So Rebecca,
I think in a way, perhaps he's been very clever about, making it almost a trailer in the previous one. So if you haven't read it, you really do want to go and read it. So, that's a bit of a talent in itself if you're writing a series.
What did you say, Craig?
See, I was just saying, Rebecca, do you sort of understand that being an ex-police officer? Because I'm in the prison system and I've been for over a quarter of a century. So I sort of understand that non-spoken sort of issue when if something went on. So, and I can imagine that would be in the police force if it was. And that's the way I sort of took it when I was reading about it. So I sort of worked out what's happened, but I understood why they just wanted to move on all the time and were very, very worried about what's Tanner who was struggling with it.
Well, from the sounds of it, it was something illegal, so I really don't know. I wouldn't have any experience of doing anything illegal in that job. But if I had, then yes, I wouldn't want to keep talking about it. So it would be something that they would be avoiding.
Yeah, it's like a closed shop almost, sort of, actually.
He did describe some of what in bits and pieces throughout the story that it had to do with misleading information on the autopsy report as to the condition of the person's skull.
Yeah.
And it sounded to me, what I was assuming is that there had been some use of excessive force and they made it sound as if because of a pre-existing condition in the deceased, that these injuries could have been caused just by, non-excessive force. But I think he gave enough clues that you do want to know, well, why were they in that position and what happened? And what is the secret now that binds these three people and is really destroying their lives?
And also I wondered, by having that secret that binds the three of them and having them all, certainly Tanner is completely conflicted about it, whether that was going to lead into the next one of the series when Tanner does feel it's necessary to, reveal something or inadvertently reveal something that then leads to, disintegration of somebody's career somewhere along the line. So that was quite a good kind of almost a trailer for what might be the next one. But if that doesn't happen, I think I'm probably going to be quite disappointed because it felt like it was going somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, did everybody enjoy the book?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Anybody not enjoy the book?
No, I love it.
Oh, we've got a full house this week. This month.
Can I just say, the first half, I think, I felt a little bored, but then at the midpoint, it just picked up and I just raced through. Because at the halfway through, I was thinking, I'm not going to make this. If this carries on, I'm just not going to get there. So I thought there was a bit of a pacing issue. But after that, it was just fly through it,
Had you read any of this before?
No.
Was it, I wonder, was it the description of Sarah's life and going to the school? And because I was thinking, where is this going? I couldn't see any connection, with the murder case that they were investigating. So for a while, it really had me baffled. And then when Conrad appeared on the scene, I thought, oh, she's going to be a victim, like the previous one. So so then it started picking up. But yes, the first chapter or so, when you just saw her sort of leading her life, I was like, what on earth?
Yeah,
I can't believe
got to do with anything.
I can't believe when Mark said he read this as a real news article, that there was a woman that actually did this, that attended a school and pretended she had a child that she didn't have. I mean, how bizarre is that?
And I was also thinking, wouldn't the other parents ask about, so this Jamie, is he in your class? What?
Yeah.
How does she get away with it? But of course, then she would just change school, wouldn't she? She would, once it became a bit more obvious.
Gets caught now and again, doesn't she? That's the impression you got.
I must admit, that was something I struggled with initially as well. Just the fact that, because I know the area as well and sort of the schools, and you wouldn't get away for very long without having a child. So I struggled initially, but then sort of, got over it.
Yeah, I was surprised.
It has happened. It has happened at a school. Sorry, Katie.
I would have thought that the school would have contacted the police, but obviously if it was based on a real case, then I guess not. I mean, I know my primary school up the road would have definitely gone straight to the police if they thought someone was hanging around, but heard the teacher's first reaction was, no, I won't do that, because I'm interested to know why.
Made me wonder for a moment when it was set, because it felt like in the now, then yes, it would have been immediately noticed and a police issue. But if it had been a few years ago, maybe there was some, tolerance there that might have come in. But I think today it would be picked up pretty quickly, because they keep such an eye on who's hanging around the school gates and the school area.
Yeah.
But didn't stop it being a good read, in my opinion.
No, absolutely no.
No, exactly.
No.
Then there is the familiarity factor. So I was there is this issue for me about, trusting the writer, and I trust Mark Billingham to take me on a journey. So I didn't worry about how Sarah connected in with this investigation of a suicide and everything. I just kind of trusted that all of this would roll itself out and become apparent, which it did. And Tom Thorne was like putting on a pair of slippers almost. It was kind of, I know this guy. I don't know what's happened to him lately, but I feel like I know this guy. So yeah.
It was interesting what Mark was saying about couples, and there being few con women, because it seemed to me as if she was the dominant one out of the two of them, which even in sort of couples, I would think that's quite rare.
That was one of my questions. Who did you feel was leading the relationship between Sarah and Conrad at the beginning?
Sarah.
Yeah.
Away.
I would have liked to have seen more of how Conrad went from being just a con man, an unfeeling con man, to a killer. I thought we saw him. He said he was crazy about Sarah. He said that to himself, and he wasn't going to be able to con this woman because he was falling for her. But then in the next scene, he's biffed the boy at the beach over the head. And it seemed to be quite a big leap. And it would have been quite interesting to have a scene of how she manipulated him and persuaded him to do that. I thought that would have been really interesting to see.
Because we've sort of got her background, but not so much on him.
Sorry. It was really an obsession that came about from it. I think he made that very clear, and very similar to the analogy with Myra Hindley and Ian Brady. I was interested that he received a letter from Brady and actually acted in part of the defense of these various appeals. And I saw him at the end, before he died. I mean, he was completely a lunatic. He wasn't making any sense whatsoever. But when I did get some sense out of him, and we used to talk about Hindley, although he appeared in the newspaper as if he was the dominant character, in fact she was very much behind him, and they fused one personality. It was really very interesting, and they had analogies in this book as well. I really enjoyed it.
So what, she was the dominant out of the two of them? Because I thought it was him.
Yes, that was the surprising thing. When you read the thing, he was the original, engrossed with Nazism and sadism, but she started off as being a follower and a pupil, and then she in fact became one of the influencers. She was the one that arranged for some of the children to be picked up and taken over. It was really quite surprising, and I thought that part of it rang true, and it came out so well in Mark's book. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's when they kind of egg each other on, isn't it? Not explicitly, but it's almost like we've got, and that's why I thought the title with their little secrets was suitable as well, because it's almost like we've got this secret, you know, thing binding, a special magical thing binding us together. And, you know, for some it might be a nice memory of a sunset on a beach, and for others it's a killing. Yeah. So,
they're feeding off each other, aren't they?
yeah, exactly. That's the right expression. Yeah.
And the binding of the two together in blood, this idea of a sort of, you know, a bloody sacrifice being part of their wedding contract almost is rang horribly true, I think, when, you know, I want to prove that you're everything. So this is, you know, how we do it. I mean, it's not something I'm advocating, you understand, but just, you know, it did ring true. But I do think that the point, there did seem to be a sort of psychological chapter missing with him to show us that movement from being obsessed to making that first murder, because that was so extreme. You almost did feel that you should have seen a bit more development towards it. But you know, I don't quite know what that development would be, and it didn't spoil my enjoyment of it. But when I was analysing it afterwards, then yes, I thought about it then. But then I'm not sure I read Tom Thorne books to analyse them, to be honest. So this was a very interesting experience.
So have you read any others, or is this your first one?
No, I've read most of them, I think.
Oh, right.
And you know, I love them. That's what I say. They're sort of, to me, they're kind of familiar, and I trust that Mark Billingham will take me on a journey that will make sense. And it does, but I hope he would forgive me for saying I don't necessarily regard it as, you know, super deep psychological insight. And by his own admission, he says he doesn't really know Tom Thorne that well. You know, he's a bloke. He does what blokes do, and sort of deals with this. So his scenes, you know, he feels recognisable without being. You get the impression that he's deep, but you don't always see it happening. You know, he's a bloke. What can I say?
Does he often feature the perpetrator as a viewpoint character? Was that something specific to this book?
No, I think that's often the case. So you do see this sort of collision of storylines, but of course there are differences in the timeline as well. So you don't always know at what stage you're looking at things, and that, I think, helps stop you from understanding everything all at once. So I think that's the writer's skill in his case.
Yeah, I really liked these other characters and their psychological viewpoint, however crazy it was. I really liked that was going on at the same time as the police procedural. It made it a bit more varied than a standard police procedural.
I would have liked a bit more background in Conrad, you know, how he became a con man. You know, was Conrad his real name, or was he Patrick Jenner? And also, this is like the second time I've read the book, and I always kind of wondered, I didn't kind of explain how he teamed up with Ella, the niece, who killed herself at the end. That was just kind of skipped over. It was quite a minor thing. It was just something I kind of picked up on, you know, in second reading. Yeah,
I think that was my feeling. There were all sorts of things I picked up at second reading, but on first reading, they didn't worry me.
Yeah, because second time round, you kind of know what's kind of happening, so you...
You look at the techniques a bit more.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, was it Conrad or Patrick Jenner? You know.
That's the thing when you're reading a book for a book club, isn't it? You're analysing it more than you would when you're sitting and just reading it to enjoy it. You're paying a bit more attention to what the characters are doing, and being a little bit more critical.
Quite strange, because again, I've read a few. You just want to stay there talking about the prequel. Did he say that Thorne meets Hendrix in the prequel? Because I've got the impression that Hendrix is about mid-30s, yeah? Or the prequel's in the mid-90s. That must make Hendrix about 50 or so, you know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, as I said, I think that's what he said in the Q&A.
Yeah.
In the prequel, Thorne meets Hendrix.
Yeah.
I always got the impression reading the books that Hendrix was maybe about mid-30s, still you kind of young and wild type thing, yeah. Whereas Thorne was about late 40s and a bit older.
But he also did say that Thorn is not aging as fast as real time. So I think this is why I got this idea that perhaps it's not quite becoming historical, but you know, some of it felt kind of a little older world than today. And I think that's what happens. And I think the age of the characters, it means that, you know, with each new book, if there were one a year, then it wouldn't be that the characters have aged a year for every book. So you may be right that, you know, when the age they were when they met, perhaps they haven't aged as much.
Yeah, because it never really mentions any years in the book, does it? It doesn't really mention any famous kind of events, like it doesn't talk about like a World Cup or an Olympics or.
Yeah, and
so I know years never specified. I see what you're saying. You know.
Yeah.
It was not a year at the time, but you still read it and think present day though. Yeah. You still read it and say 2019, 2020.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting if he writes another one set in 2020.
I think Tom Thorne might have retired.
Yeah.
Were you satisfied with the ending?
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how she hid out for quite a few months in North Wales, which is a bit surprising, but she was quite resourceful with Sarah. Yeah, so.
We don't find out what happened to the missing woman, do we?
No.
Say exactly that.
Yeah, I'm
pretty sure the dog as well.
Yeah, I left the dog behind.
I was a bit worried about the dog because it didn't get mentioned for great swathes of the book. I wondered what happened to it. That's just me. I've got a thing about dogs.
Oh no, I did wonder about that as well.
I thought Sarah was a bit, at the end, a little bit meek. I kind of expected a bit more fight out of her somehow.
But she's pregnant though, isn't it? So, you know, she's you know, she's in the situation she's always dreamt of for years. Yeah? She's having a child, so some of the madness is ebbed away. Yeah.
I think one of the things that also surprised me a little bit was I thought there was clearly something very, very wrong with her, and there was no talk of her maybe going into a psychiatric unit. You know, it was more sort of down the jury route, the crime route. And when, let's face it, somebody, if it was all genuine, with regard to her going up to the school and whatever, she was clearly completely not normal. She was a Liam Brady almost. So I would have thought she would have been going down the psychiatric route. Oh,
to believe that she's got a little boy.
Sorry?
Jamie.
To believe she's got a little boy.
Sometimes I was almost convinced she did. It was so well written.
Yeah.
You describe a little boy. I sort of thought he seemed really real.
Ball gifts and everything, football tops and trainers. And yeah.
It made you feel almost sorry for her at some point, didn't it? On some level.
Yeah.
To be so desperate that you would delude yourself to that degree. I mean, and her childhood that came into it. I thought that was quite compelling.
I wondered why that was included, but it's only right at the end, you know, when they explain the magic mushroom death, the psychedelic mushroom death. So, maybe that's because I mentioned the story of a child who digging up the bike, and maybe that explains part of her character. But you know, the book could have done without that. Really, I was thinking that until I got right to the end, and it says,
that was really
these are the leftovers from when I killed my father.
Yeah.
That the way the father buried the bike in the garden, psychologically bullying her. I was absolutely engrossed reading all through those parts. It was amazing the way that he was doing that to her. And you can imagine so much more going on that's not written, and hence in the end that she fell on those mushrooms to whatever, you know.
It's the sound. I
right at the end, I loved the letter. I absolutely adored it, and I really read it and reread it again to when she was in Bronzefield, I think it was, yeah, and wrote the letter and still believe in Jamie and her child. Fabulous.
A letter from your mother in jail, yeah. Family is everything, yeah.
Yeah. Has anybody got any other thoughts on the book?
It just makes me want to read the rest of them actually now, so I'm going to go back and I'll read maybe one or two before.
Yeah.
The prequel's probably a good start.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And the one before, with the incident that we all are interested in now. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to start from the beginning actually and read them. It's getting the time, but I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
How did it work for you not knowing anything about the series, so coming to the series completely new, as quite a few of you did? Because I know we had that discussion last time about are you okay, and quite a lot of people said, well, we do like starting a series at the start and reading in order, but did you find it okay?
It was all. I mean, it was all right. I a couple of times through the book, I kept having to reread what was going on. I don't know if it's because it was so fast paced on some points. So I was like, who said what, and where's that come from? I had to go back a page or so and reread it. But I was constantly craving for more information about the characters, which I was also aware that this was mid-series, so quite possibly this was all explained previously, so, and which he sort of talked about in his Q&A session at the beginning. Like, you know, it's that fine balance where it doesn't need to bore the people who've already read the series in order. However, I'm new and I'm now craving that information when I'm reading the book, but I'm also craving what's going on in the book as well, and I want to know where it goes. You know, interesting.
I'm a bit different there because I've got so much to read that starting a book at book 16, thinking, no, I'm not going back to the beginning. You know, I'm just not going there, because basically it'll take me a long time, and there's all these other books. So I came to it as a sampler. So I probably won't go back, but I will read the prequel, and I'll see if the prequel pushes me forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm one that usually I do like to read from the beginning, but didn't stop me enjoying the book.
No.
Exactly. Again, I listened to it on audio. Did anybody else do it on audio? No.
No.
No, but I have to say I read it on Kindle, and I found that my memory for the people, the names, you know, is a bit dodgier than when I read it in paperback. So I really struggled to kind of remember people's names and what they were doing, and, you know, certain bits. Like with the dog, when I looked back, I had to look back and check, oh, was there really a dog? You know, did I imagine it? So yeah, so I just can't remember as well as when I read it on paper.
Well, Mark narrated the audio book.
I was going to ask.
So that was good.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've just got a pop-up box on the laptop. Yeah, Mark narrated the audio book, so that was really good. He did a really good job with that. So I enjoyed it. Does anybody have any preferences for themes for next month? Because I haven't thought that far ahead. I haven't been very well.